So the Hawaii Honolulu mission, it covers all the islands. That's a question that people ask a lot, like, are all the islands one mission? And it's like, yes, they are. So when missionaries are not assigned to the visitor center, they usually will bounce around from island to island. When they are, sometimes they go to a different island. I didn't, so I spent most of my time in Laie, and then for like a 2 transfer thing for about 3 months, I was just on the other side of the island in Honolulu. And in terms of like people and languages, there are Hawaiian people there, but it's kind of like Native Americans, where there's just been like an influx of lots of other people and cultures, and so there are some people that still speak Hawaiian, but it's more of like, it was a dying language, it's coming back now, but like most of them, like, they speak English. And so other prominent languages, among the people that live there, there's lots of people from Japan and China, and also there's people from different islands in the Pacific. So sometimes there were missionaries that were called Marshallese speaking for people from the Marshall Islands, or Chuukese speaking. That's another little tiny island that's in the Pacific. And also we had missionaries would be assigned to serve in Samoan wards and also Tongan wards. And so sometimes you aren't always necessarily called like Samoan speaking or Tongan speaking, but sometimes just like the nature of just like the mishmash of people and cultures that you teach, like I think missionaries would just end up like learning those languages or trying to teach in those languages. And so it's definitely like a very multilingual type of mission. The church actually goes like way back to Hawaii. This is a story I got to tell a lot. There was, let's see if I can remember my history. I would tell people about this in the visitor center. So the Book of Mormon in Hawaiian, it was actually the 6th translation of the Book of Mormon. So they published it in like German and Welsh and French and like a couple European languages, and then Hawaiian. It was published in Hawaiian. And how that came about was there's a group of missionaries that went from California to the Sandwich Islands, they were called at the time, to Hawaii, including George Buchanan. And he was one of the 12, like back in the day. This was in the mid 1800s that this happened. And so this group of missionaries came, and they were kind of trying to do some missionary work, and they were teaching mostly sailors, but they weren't having very much success. And so actually half the group decided just to go back to California, but George Buchanan and a few others, they decided that they wanted to stay and keep teaching. And George Buchanan had a particular interest in going more inland and teaching the native people. And he was on the island of Maui, and okay, so we'll stop there. So George Buchanan was on the island of Maui. And then, this is like the other side of the story, there's a man named Jonathan DePella, and he was a Hawaiian native, also very well educated, so he spoke English and Hawaiian. And he was a descendant of chiefs on Maui, so very well respected. And he lived in a village on Maui. And one day, he had this dream that there was going to be a man dressed in white that was going to come to him with an important message to share. But he woke up before he got to hear what the message was. And then the next day, George Buchanan walked into his village, and he was wearing a white suit. That was something that he wore just like, well, like he was kind of like famous for it, I guess, or something. And so he was wearing his white suit, and Jonathan's wife and sister-in-law saw him in the street, and they recognized him as the man from Jonathan's dream. And so they turned and they ran away, and they ran to go get Jonathan. And so when George Buchanan met Jonathan DePella, he was just like, okay, what's your message? I've been waiting for you, because dreams are very important to like the Polynesian culture. And so Jonathan was baptized after he heard George Buchanan's message, and then together he and George Buchanan worked to translate the Book of Mormon into Hawaiian. And so after that, there were many people in Hawaii that got baptized, and they built a temple in Hawaii. It's like the first temple that was built outside of like the continental U.S. So they built like the 4 first ones in Utah, and then number 5 was Laie, Hawaii. And so the church has like a very old history there. It goes like back to like kind of like almost like Restoration time, which is really neat. So it's good history.